Now, the U.S. has threatened that any efforts to assist the Iranian tanker recently released from Gibraltar will have potential criminal consequences. Washington said it has relayed its, quote, strong message to Greek government and all ports in the Mediterranean about facilitating the tanker. An official at U.S. State Department claimed tanker was assisting Iran's Islamic Revolution Guards Corps, which the U.S. has designated as a terrorist organization. Iranian tanker left anchorage off Gibraltar on Sunday after being seized for more than 1 month by British forces. Ship tracking data suggests a tanker is heading to Greece. The Greek government has also not commented on the situation. Meanwhile, Iran's foreign minister, the U.S. bullying means Iran cannot reveal where the tanker is headed.
We cannot be very transparent with the destination of our oil because the United States illegally tries to bully others from purchasing our oil. So they will make the necessary decision based on the exigencies of the time about where we can in fact sell that oil.
Zarif, who was speaking after meeting his Finnish counterpart, said no international body has sanctioned the country's oil sales. He also slammed Britain's detention of the Adrian Darya tanker as illegal. He said Britain cited EU sanctions for the detention, while non-members are not bound by the bloc's decisions. And joining us now out of Bristol for more on the story is Tony Gosling, investigative journalist. Hello, Tony. It's a pleasure to have you back on one of our bulletins. Now, your thoughts on this never-ending saga with respect to this tanker?
Well, the Greek government are pointing out to Washington that the United States is not in Europe. It's 4,000 miles away. It's really none of the United States' business, even though, of course, they like to keep their Sixth Fleet in the Mediterranean, where this tanker goes. We've made it clear as Europeans, and the British have too, that this tanker can carry on its way. In fact, many people have missed that the seizure of this tanker was done by the then Foreign Secretary Jeremy Hunt, who has now been ditched by the new Prime Minister Boris Johnson. So in a way, this is like a kind of poison chalice that Hunt was leaving for the next government, because he knew he probably wouldn't. He was the leadership rival with Boris Johnson, and when Boris Johnson won and took over, one of the first things he's done is to overthrow this decision by Jeremy Hunt. So it just shows actually something maybe positive happening in Britain, where the British are leaning much more towards a European position than a US position when it comes to Iran. Also, Boris also revealed that Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe, the woman, British, she's been detained in Iran, may have actually been a spy. So this is interesting, isn't it? That we've now got Boris Johnson as Prime Minister, and whether he did that or not is up for on purpose. Is up for discussion. But he did, and so I think maybe we've got a little bit more of a sensible government with Boris than we would have done with the military-industrial complex and the Pentagon, who seemed to pull the strings of Jeremy Hunt, the former Foreign Secretary.
And what is exactly the Pentagon doing here, Tony? Because it seems like if they're going to try to go after anything that the revenues from which are somehow, at even the smallest percentage, going to get appropriated to the IRGC, and they're going to say the IRGC is a terror organization. Therefore, that's big. I mean, if you travel down that premise, you could actually pretty much put your hands on anything belonging to the Iranian government.
Look, I don't think that really flies, apart from maybe on the controlled mass media in the West, that the IRGC is a terrorist organization. The biggest terrorist organization on the planet is run out of the Pentagon and out of Washington. The United States like to call other people terrorists. They like to call people what they are. They are actually, I think, a bit deluded and out of control, dangerous potentially. They've been interfering from the United States in the Middle East really ever since the end of empire, since World War II, the end of the British Empire, that is. and they're not subtle about it. So we've seen, ever since the turn of the century and the 2003 illegal invasion of Iraq, we've seen the interventions in Syria, the British going along with a lot of that. But actually, the United States has been leading this militarily. And that's because the US is very much in the thrall of the Israel lobby, because all of this doesn't benefit Britain, it doesn't benefit the United States, it benefits the Israelis. And they want, the Israeli government, that is, not the people, they want to see a balkanization of the Middle East, and that's what this is about. The US is really doing this, I think, for the Israelis. What it is with this tanker, it'd be interesting to see if the Iranians now release the other tanker in the Persian Gulf, but it's harassment and piracy on the high seas. And I have to say, this is the sort of thing the British Empire did before the Americans took over from us as a big Western empire. The British were doing this all the time. Piracy, although we like to think of the pirates as some kind of independent force, were actually an independent flag which was financed right through the British Crown in Queen Elizabeth's day. So this kind of piracy goes back a long way, and the Americans and the British, I'm afraid, are not innocent, and they're not actually allowing proper free trade and free travel. But actually, thankfully, America is a long, long way away. I think the Europeans are doing everything they can now, including Britain, to shut the United States out of the Mediterranean.
It's funny, hundreds of years ago, it was called privateering, if I'm not incorrect there. I want to thank you for joining us there out of Bristol. Tony Gosling, investigative journalist, there joining us.